Good evening and welcome. Settle into a comfortable position, gently close your eyes, and allow your mind to drift back through the centuries. Tonight, we'll journey together through more than 1,000 years of history. From a mythical founding of a small village on the Tiber River to the rise and eventual collapse of one of the world's greatest empires. There are no sudden noises here and no jarring interruptions. There is only a continuous story to accompany you as you unwind and drift into a deep and restful sleep. Our story begins not with emperors and legions, but with a legend whispered across the Italian peninsula, a story of two brothers, a she-wolf, and the founding of a city that would one day rule the known world. Let the story begin. The mythological founding of Rome. Our journey begins in the realm of myth, a place where gods and mortals intertwine and destinies are forged. The story of Rome's birth is the story of two brothers, Romulus and Remus, twin sons of the god Mars and a mortal priestess. Cast out at birth by a jealous king, the infants were placed in a basket and set adrift on the winding waters of the Tiber. It was fate, or perhaps divine intervention, that carried them to the shore, where they were discovered not by a person, but by a she-wolf. This maternal wolf, the Lupa, nursed the abandoned boys in her cave, saving them from certain death. As they grew, raised by a humble shepherd and his wife, the twins displayed the strength and leadership they inherited from their divine father. They were natural leaders, charismatic and bold. Upon learning of their true heritage, they returned to their birthplace, overthrew the usurping king, and restored their grandfather to the throne. But their own destiny was calling to them. They decided to found a new city near the very spot where the she-wolf had saved their lives. Soon, however, the brothers quarreled over where to build. Romulus favored the Palatine Hill, while Remus chose the Aventine Hill. Seeking a sign from the gods, they watched the sky for an omen. Remus saw 6 vultures first, but then Romulus saw 12. Each claimed divine favor, and their dispute turned bitter. Romulus began building a wall around his chosen hill, and in a final act of defiance, Remus mockingly leaped over it. In a fit of rage, Romulus struck his brother down, declaring, "So shall it be for all who dare to cross my walls." And so, on the blood of his own brother, Romulus founded his city. He named it Rome, after himself, around the year we now call 753 BCE. This foundational story, steeped in violence, divine will, and fierce pride, would echo through the centuries. It created a powerful identity for the Roman people, a people descended from a god, nurtured by a miracle, and destined from their very first day for greatness and for conflict. The Roman monarchy. From this mythological beginning, the small settlement on the Palatine Hill slowly grew. This first period of Roman history is known as the Roman monarchy, an era ruled by a succession of 7 kings that began with Romulus himself. While the stories of these kings blend fact and legend, they paint a picture of a city finding its footing and laying the groundwork for its future. Romulus, the first king, was a warrior. He populated his new city by offering asylum to exiles and refugees. According to legend, he famously orchestrated the abduction of the Sabine women to provide wives for his men, an act that led to war, and then a union with the neighboring Sabine people. He is credited with establishing the first Roman legions and, just as importantly, the Roman Senate, an advisory council of elders, or patres, who would become the bedrock of Roman government for 1,000 years. He was followed by Numa Pompilius, a stark contrast to the king before him. Numa was a man of peace and piety. He is said to have established Rome's earliest religious rites and institutions, creating the priesthoods, the calendar of religious festivals, and building the Temple of Janus, whose gates were open in times of war and closed in times of peace. During his long reign, the gates of Janus remained shut, a testament to the peace he brought to the young city. The kings who followed each left their own mark. Tullus Hostilius was a warlike king who conquered Rome's mother city, Alba Longa, and expanded Roman territory. Ancus Marcius, Numa's grandson, founded the port of Ostia at the mouth of the Tiber, connecting Rome to the sea and to the wider world of trade. The final three kings of Rome were not Latin, but Etruscan, from the powerful civilization to the north. Tarquinius Priscus began major construction projects, including the city's first sewer system, the Cloaca Maxima, and the first version of the Circus Maximus for chariot racing. His successor, Servius Tullius, was a man of humble origins who rose to become king. He conducted the first Roman census and reformed the army, organizing citizens into classes based on their wealth. The era of kings came to a dramatic end with the seventh and final king, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, or Tarquin the Proud. He was a tyrant who ruled through fear and violence, ignoring the Senate and oppressing the people. The breaking point came when his son committed a heinous crime against a noble woman named Lucretia. Her tragic death ignited a rebellion led by the nobleman Lucius Junius Brutus. In 509 BCE, the people of Rome rose up, drove Tarquin the Proud into exile, and vowed never again to be ruled by a king. This moment was the birth of a new idea, a new form of government that would change the world, the Roman Republic. The rise of the Roman Republic. With the shadow of tyranny fresh in their minds, the Roman people embarked on a great political experiment. They replaced the authority of a single king with a system designed to prevent any one man from holding absolute power. They called it residential publica, meaning the public thing. The Roman Republic was born. At the head of this new government were two consuls, elected each year, who held equal power. Each could veto the other's decision, ensuring a balance. They were the chief magistrates, commanding the army and presiding over the state. But their power was temporary, lasting only 1 year. The true anchor of the state was the Senate, the same body of elders established by the kings, now made up of the city's leading citizens and former magistrates. The Senate didn't pass laws, but its decrees carried immense weight, guiding foreign policy, controlling state finances, and shaping the destiny of Rome. Power also lay with assemblies, where Roman citizens could vote on laws and elect officials. The early centuries of the Republic were defined not just by external wars, but by a long and difficult internal struggle of the orders. Roman society was divided into two main classes: the patricians, the small, wealthy, landowning aristocracy, and the plebeians, who were everyone else: the farmers, merchants, artisans, and laborers who made up the vast majority of the population. At first, all political power was in the hands of the patricians. The plebeians, who filled the army's ranks and did the work that kept Rome running, fought for centuries to gain political equality. At times, they used a unique and powerful tool: the secession of the plebs. They would abandon the city altogether, leaving the patricians to fend for themselves, a kind of strike that brought the city to a standstill. Through these struggles, the plebeians gradually won major concessions. They gained their own officials, the tribunes, who had the extraordinary power to veto acts of the Senate. They secured Rome's first written laws, the 12 Tables, ensuring that justice was not arbitrary. And eventually, they won the right to hold any office in the state, including the consulship itself. This long struggle, while often tense, forged a resilient political system and a deep-seated sense of civic duty. While resolving its internal conflicts, the Republic was also relentlessly expanding. For centuries, Rome fought a series of near-constant wars against its neighbors on the Italian peninsula. These were hard-fought wars that taught the Romans lessons in discipline, organization, and perseverance. By 270 BCE, after centuries of struggle, Rome had conquered or allied with every other power in Italy, making it the undisputed master of the peninsula. But its gaze was now turning outward, across the sea, where a formidable rival was waiting: the Punic Wars and expansion. Having secured Italy, Rome's growing influence brought it into direct conflict with the other great power of the Western Mediterranean, the maritime empire of Carthage. Located in modern-day Tunisia, Carthage was a wealthy trading city with a powerful navy. It was in Sicily that the first spark of conflict was lit, beginning a century-long struggle for dominance, known as the Punic Wars. The First Punic War, which began in 264 BCE, was largely a naval conflict. Rome, a land-based power, had little experience at sea. Undaunted, the Romans simply captured a Carthaginian warship, reverse-engineered it, and built a massive fleet. They even innovated by adding a boarding bridge called the corvus, which allowed their superior soldiers to turn a sea battle into a land battle on deck. After more than 20 years of brutal fighting, Rome emerged victorious, forcing Carthage to give up Sicily and pay a heavy price. But the peace was short-lived. In Carthage, a brilliant general named Hamilcar Barca raised his son to swear an oath of eternal hatred toward Rome. That son was Hannibal. The Second Punic War was Hannibal's war. In 218 BCE, he unleashed one of the most audacious military campaigns in history. He marched an army, complete with war elephants, from Spain over the treacherous Pyrenees and across the snow-capped Alps into Italy itself. He descended into the Po Valley, shocking the Romans and winning a series of stunning victories, most devastatingly at Cannae. There, Hannibal's smaller army completely enveloped and annihilated a much larger Roman force in a masterpiece of tactics. Rome was on its knees, but Rome did not break. Even with Hannibal rampaging through Italy for over a decade, the Romans refused to surrender. They adopted a new strategy of avoiding direct battle and instead waging a war of attrition. Meanwhile, a young Roman general named Scipio took the fight to Carthaginian territory in Spain and then, boldest of all, invaded Africa itself. This forced Carthage to recall Hannibal to defend his homeland. The final showdown came in 202 BCE at the Battle of Zama. There, Scipio finally defeated Hannibal, ending the war. Carthage was stripped of its empire and its independence. Yet, for some in Rome, even a weakened Carthage was too much of a threat. The conservative Senator Cato the Elder ended every speech he gave with the words, "Carthage must be destroyed." In 149 BCE, Rome launched the Third and final Punic War. After a 3-year siege, the city of Carthage fell. The Romans systematically destroyed it, sold its people into slavery, and, as legend tells it, sowed the fields with salt so that nothing would ever grow there again. With Carthage gone, Rome was the unquestioned master of the Western Mediterranean. During this same period, Rome had also turned its legions eastward, conquering Macedonia and bringing the city-states of Greece under its dominion. The small city on the Tiber now controlled a vast territory, but the immense wealth and power flowing into Rome would soon destabilize the very foundations of the Republic. The late Republic, Caesar, and Civil War. The success of Roman expansion created deep problems at home. The Republic, designed to govern a small city-state, was now straining under the weight of a Mediterranean empire. Vast fortunes were made by governors of the new provinces, while the small farmer, the traditional backbone of the army, was being squeezed out. They returned from long years of military service to find their farms bankrupt, bought up by wealthy elites who created massive plantations worked by an ever-increasing supply of enslaved people. This growing inequality led to a century of political violence and civil unrest. It began with the Gracchi brothers, 2 tribunes who tried to pass land reform laws to help the poor. Both were assassinated by mobs of senators, signaling a new and dangerous era where disputes were settled not by debate, but by violence. The military itself began to change. The general Gaius Marius reformed the army, recruiting soldiers from the landless poor and promising them land upon retirement. This was a necessary reform, but it had a fatal side effect. The soldiers' loyalty shifted away from the state and toward their generals. Ambitious commanders now had private armies. The first to truly exploit this was Sulla. In 88 BCE, did the unthinkable. He marched his legions on Rome itself to settle a political dispute. He declared himself dictator and unleashed a bloody purge of his enemies. Into this volatile world stepped one of history's most famous figures, Gaius Julius Caesar. A man of boundless ambition, charisma, and genius, Caesar formed a political alliance with 2 of Rome's most powerful men, the wealthy Crassus and the celebrated General Pompey the Great. This first triumvirate allowed the three men to dominate Roman politics. Caesar secured the governorship of Gaul. For the next 8 years, he waged a brilliant and brutal campaign, conquering the territories of modern-day France and Belgium, and even launching expeditions to Britain. His successes, however, made his rivals in the Senate, particularly Pompey, deeply nervous. When his governorship ended, the Senate ordered Caesar to disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen. Caesar stood with his loyal legion on the banks of a small river called the Rubicon, which marked the border of Italy proper. To cross it with his army would be an act of treason and civil war. In January of 49 BCE, with the famous words Alia iacta est, the die is cast, he led his legion across the river. The civil war was swift. Pompey and his allies fled, but Caesar pursued and defeated them. After eliminating the last remnants of opposition, Caesar returned to Rome as its undisputed master. He was declared dictator for life, and he began a series of ambitious reforms. He reformed the calendar, creating the Julian calendar that we still use today in a modified form. But his accumulation of power offended the conservative senators. To them, he was a king in all but name. On the Ides of March 15th, in 44 BCE, a group of senators calling themselves the Liberators cornered Caesar at a Senate meeting and stabbed him to death. They believed they were saving the Republic. In reality, they had only plunged it into 2 more decades of civil war and ensured its final end. The age of Augustus and the Pax Romana, the assassination of Julius Caesar, did not restore the Republic. Instead, it created a power vacuum. Caesar's assassins, led by Brutus and Cassius, expected to be hailed as heroes, but they had misjudged the mood of the people. At Caesar's funeral, his trusted lieutenant, Mark Antony, delivered a fiery eulogy that turned the Roman populace against the conspirators, forcing them to flee. The true heir to Caesar's legacy, however, came as a complete surprise. In his will, Caesar had adopted his great-nephew, an intelligent and cunning 19-year-old named Gaius Octavian. The young Octavian skillfully used his status as Caesar's son to win the loyalty of Caesar's veterans. He formed a new alliance, the Second Triumvirate, with Mark Antony and another general, Lepidus. They hunted down and defeated Caesar's assassins at the Battle of Philippi. With their common enemy gone, the triumvirate soon fractured. Lepidus was sidelined, leaving the Roman world divided between 2 men, Mark Antony in the east and Octavian in the west. Antony established his base in Alexandria, where he began his famous political and romantic alliance with the Egyptian queen, Cleopatra. In Rome, Octavian waged a masterful propaganda campaign, portraying Antony as a decadent monarch under the spell of a foreign queen. The inevitable final conflict came in 31 BCE at the naval battle of Actium. Octavian's fleet decisively defeated the combined forces of Antony and Cleopatra. The lovers fled back to Egypt, where they both took their own lives. At just 32 years old, Octavian was now the sole master of the entire Roman world. But he had learned from his great-uncle's fate. He knew the Romans would never accept an open king. So, in a series of careful, deliberate moves, he restored the Republic. He formally returned power to the Senate, but did so in a way that left him in ultimate control. The grateful Senate bestowed upon him a new name, Augustus, meaning the revered one. He also took the title Princeps, or first citizen. In theory, he was merely the first among equals. In reality, he was Rome's first emperor. The year 27 BCE is generally seen as the beginning of the Roman Empire. Augustus's long reign brought lasting peace and stability after a century of civil war. This era, which would last for roughly 200 years, became known as the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. He professionalized the army, secured the empire's frontiers, and reformed the tax system. He launched a massive building program, famously boasting that he found Rome a city of brick and left it a city of marble. He ruled for over 40 years, and when he died, he left behind a stable, prosperous empire and a blueprint for imperial rule that would last for centuries. The Julio-Claudian dynasty. Augustus had created a new form of government, but he hadn't created a clear system for choosing the next emperor. His long search for an heir eventually settled on his stepson, Tiberius, a grim and reluctant man who became the second emperor. This began the Julio-Claudian dynasty, the family line tracing its ancestry back to both Augustus and Julius Caesar. The reigns of the four emperors who followed Augustus were a dramatic mix of stability, paranoia, and outright madness. Tiberius ruled for over 2 decades, much of it from a self-imposed exile on the island of Capri. He was a capable administrator, but deeply unpopular, and his reign was darkened by treason trials and a growing atmosphere of fear. Upon Tiberius's death, the throne passed to his great-nephew, Gaius, better known by his childhood nickname Caligula or Little Boots. Caligula's reign began with promise, but quickly descended into terror and absurdity. Ancient historians, though perhaps prone to exaggeration, paint a picture of a depraved tyrant. He was accused of demanding to be worshipped as a living god and, most famously, of planning to make his favorite horse, Incitatus, a consul. His cruelty made him countless enemies, and after just 4 years, he was assassinated by his own Praetorian Guard. In the chaos that followed, the guards found Caligula's uncle, Claudius, hiding behind a curtain and promptly declared him the new emperor. Claudius, who had a limp and a stammer, had been kept out of public life, but he proved to be a surprisingly effective ruler. He was a diligent administrator whose most significant achievement was the conquest of Britain in 43 CE. His reign, however, was also marked by court intrigue, driven by his ambitious wives. It's widely believed his final wife, Agrippina the Younger, poisoned him with a dish of mushrooms to secure the throne for her own son. That son was Nero. Like Caligula, Nero's reign began well, but his darker impulses soon took over. He had his own mother murdered, and his rule became increasingly tyrannical. In 64 CE, a massive fire devastated Rome. A rumor spread that Nero himself had started it, and that he fiddled while Rome burned. Needing a scapegoat, Nero blamed the fire on a small, obscure religious sect known as the Christians, launching the first major persecution against them. Eventually, rebellions broke out across the empire. Abandoned by all, he took his own life in 68 CE, reportedly uttering the last words, "When an artist dies in me." With his death, the family line of Augustus came to an end, and the Roman world once again plunged into civil war. The Flavian dynasty and the 5 good emperors. The year following Nero's death, 69 CE, is known as the Year of the 4 Emperors, as 4 different generals fought for control. The victor who emerged was Vespasian, a pragmatic and down-to-earth general who had been commanding Roman forces during a major Jewish revolt in Judea. Vespasian's rise to power marked the beginning of the Flavian dynasty. From a humble Italian family, he brought a dose of common sense to the government. He refilled the treasury emptied by Nero and began construction on a massive new amphitheater in the heart of Rome. It would become known as the Colosseum, a gift to the Roman people for gladiatorial games and public spectacles. Vespasian left the suppression of the Jewish revolt to his son, Titus. In 70 CE, Titus captured and destroyed Jerusalem and its sacred temple. When Vespasian died, Titus became emperor. His brief reign was marked by the catastrophic eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE, which buried the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum. He was succeeded by his younger brother, Domitian, a far more autocratic ruler whose reign of terror against the Senate led to his assassination. The end of the Flavian dynasty ushered in what the 18th century historian Edward Gibbon famously called the happiest age of humanity, the era of the 5 good emperors. After Domitian's death, the Senate chose one of its own, an elderly senator named Nerva, to be emperor. This set a new precedent. For the next 80 years, succession was determined not by birth but by adoption. Each emperor chose a successor based on merit and ability. Nerva adopted the respected General Trajan. Under Trajan, the Roman Empire reached its greatest territorial size. Trajan adopted his relative, Hadrian, Hadrian was a consolidator. He judged some of Trajan's conquests to be indefensible and pulled the empire's frontiers back. He spent most of his reign touring the provinces and shoring up defenses. His most famous legacy is Hadrian's Wall, a 73-mile-long stone fortification built across the north of Britain to mark the edge of the Roman world. Hadrian adopted the peaceful Antoninus Pius, whose long, stable reign was so uneventful it's often overlooked. Antoninus, in turn, adopted Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius was the philosopher-emperor, a Stoic whose private writings, known as the Meditations, offer a profound insight into the mind of a man wrestling with the burden of power. His reign, however, was far from peaceful. It was beset by constant warfare on the northern frontiers and a devastating pandemic known as the Antonine Plague. Marcus Aurelius made one fateful break with the tradition of adoption. He allowed his own son, Commodus, to succeed him. This decision brought the age of the five good emperors to a disastrous end and set the stage for a century of chaos. The crisis of the 3rd century, the reign of Commodus, the son of Marcus Aurelius, was a grim caricature of imperial power. He had no interest in governing, preferring to fight as a gladiator in the arena. His cruel rule ended with his assassination in 192 CE, which once again plunged the empire in a civil war. This led to the rise of the Severan dynasty, founded by the general Septimius Severus, who famously advised his sons to pay the soldiers and ignore everyone else. The assassination of the last Severan emperor in 235 CE kicked off a 50-year period of almost complete anarchy known as the crisis of the 3rd century. The Roman Empire came perilously close to total collapse. The crisis had three main components: political instability, foreign invasion, and economic collapse. Politically, the empire was in a state of perpetual civil war. Legions would simply proclaim their own commanders as emperor, leading to a dizzying succession of barracks emperors. In just 50 years, there were at least 20 recognized emperors and dozens of other usurpers. Most ruled for only a few months before being assassinated. This weakness was exploited by enemies on all sides. In the north, Germanic tribes like the Goths and Franks broke across the Rhine and Danube frontiers. To the east, the new Sasanian Persian Empire mounted major invasions, even capturing the Emperor Valerian in battle. Parts of the empire broke away entirely, forming their own independent states. Economically, the empire was in a downward spiral. The constant warfare was ruinously expensive. To pay soldiers, emperors drastically devalued the currency, debasing silver coins until they were almost worthless. This led to hyperinflation, destroying trade. Plague returned, the population declined, and farmland was abandoned. The interconnected world of the Pax Romana was shattered. Just as all seemed lost, a series of tough soldier emperors from the province of Illyria managed to pull the empire back from the brink. Claudius Gothicus won a major victory against the Goths. His successor, Aurelian, in a whirlwind 5-year reign, defeated invaders and reconquered the breakaway empires, earning the title Restorer of the World. These emperors saved the Roman state, but the empire that emerged was very different from the one that came before. It was more militarized, more autocratic, and far more fragile. The late empire, Diocletian and Constantine. The man who finally ended the crisis of the 3rd century was an officer named Diocletian, who became emperor in 284 CE. Diocletian recognized that the empire was too large and complex for one man to rule alone. In a radical reform, he instituted the Tetrarchy, or rule of 4. He divided the empire into an eastern and a western half. He was the senior emperor, or Augustus, of the East, and he appointed a colleague, Maximian, as Augustus of the West. Each Augustus then adopted a junior emperor, or Caesar, as his designated successor. The idea was to provide for an orderly succession and ensure an emperor was always near a major frontier. Diocletian also enacted sweeping reforms of the military, bureaucracy, and tax system. He dropped all pretense of the emperor being the first citizen. The emperor was now an absolute monarch, a remote figure surrounded by elaborate court ceremony. This later phase of the empire is often called the Dominate, from the Latin word dominus, meaning lord or master. Diocletian's system, however, did not long survive his voluntary retirement. Soon, the various emperors were once again engaged in civil war. The ultimate victor to emerge from this struggle was Constantine the Great. Before a crucial battle outside Rome in 312 CE, Constantine reportedly had a vision of a Christian symbol in the sky and heard the words, "In this sign, you will conquer." He ordered his soldiers to paint the symbol on their shields and won the battle. This marked the beginning of Constantine's conversion to Christianity, a turning point for the religion and the empire. In 313, the Edict of Milan officially ended the persecution of Christians. By 324 CE, Constantine had defeated all his rivals and reunited the empire. His most enduring act was the creation of a new capital. He chose the ancient Greek city of Byzantium, strategically located where Europe and Asia meet. He massively rebuilt the city, and in 330 CE, dedicated it as New Rome. It would soon become known to all as Constantinople, the city of Constantine. This move shifted the empire's center of gravity decisively to the east. Constantine became the first Christian emperor. His patronage of the church was immense, and he laid the foundation for the transformation of the Roman Empire into a Christian state. When he died, he left behind an empire that was once again united and stable, but its heart was now in the east, and its soul was increasingly Christian. The fall of the Western Roman Empire. After Constantine's death, the empire was usually divided, with one emperor ruling the more resilient east from Constantinople and another ruling the west, often from cities like Milan or Ravenna. The western half was entering its final, troubled century. The causes of the West's decline were a complex web of problems: chronic political instability, deep economic weakness, and immense pressure on its frontiers from barbarian peoples. The dynamic changed dramatically in the late 4th century, when a nomadic people from Central Asia, the Huns, swept into Eastern Europe. Their arrival displaced the Gothic tribes, setting off a massive refugee crisis. In 376 CE, a large group of Visigoths were permitted to cross the Danube River into Roman territory. Mistreated by corrupt Roman officials, they soon rose in rebellion. In 378 CE, at the Battle of Adrianople, they delivered a crushing defeat to the Roman army and killed the Emperor Valens. The psychological blow was stunning. The Visigoths remained a volatile force inside the empire. In 410 CE, under their king Alaric, they marched into Italy and did the unthinkable. They sacked the city of Rome itself. For 3 days, the Goths looted the ancient capital. The Eternal City, which had not been breached by a foreign enemy in 800 years, had fallen. The 5th century saw the Western Empire steadily disintegrate. Its government was often in the hands of weak emperors, with real power held by powerful generals, many of whom were of barbarian origin. The empire could no longer control its borders. Vandals, Suebi, and Alans swept through Gaul and into Spain. The Vandals then crossed into North Africa, the breadbasket of the West, and conquered it. In 455 CE, the Vandals sailed from Africa and sacked Rome for a second time, a far more destructive event than the first. Gaul, Spain, and North Africa were now effectively lost. The Roman army, deprived of tax revenue and manpower from these provinces, withered away. In the mid-5th century, the Huns, united under their terrifying leader Attila, threatened both halves of the empire before being turned back. The end of the Western Roman Empire wasn't a single event, but a slow process of collapse. By the 470s, the Western Emperor controlled little more than Italy. The final act was almost a quiet postscript. In 476 CE, a Germanic chieftain named Odoacer deposed the last Western Roman emperor. In a final, sad irony, this last emperor was a young boy named Romulus Augustulus, combining the name of Rome's mythical founder and its first emperor. Odoacer didn't claim the imperial title for himself. He simply sent the imperial robes and diadem to the Eastern Emperor in Constantinople, signaling that a separate emperor in the West was no longer necessary. The Western Roman Empire had ceased to exist. Legacy of Rome and gentle outro. The year 476 CE marks the traditional end of our story, but the story of Rome doesn't truly end there. In the East, the Roman Empire did not fall. It lived on, centered in Constantinople, for another 1,000 years. This Eastern Roman, or Byzantine, empire preserved Roman law, administration, and Greek culture, acting as a bulwark for Christendom through the Middle Ages, until its own final fall in 1453. And in the West, though the political structure had vanished, the legacy of Rome was embedded so deeply into the soil of Europe that it could never be erased. It lived on in the languages that grew from its Latin tongue: Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Romanian. It lived on in the Roman Catholic Church, which retained the administrative structure and language of ancient Rome. It lived on in the law. The great codification of Roman law by the Emperor Justinian became the foundation for the legal systems of most of Western Europe. The idea of the Republic, of citizenship, of a Senate, and of law above any single ruler would be rediscovered centuries later, inspiring the founders of new nations. It lives on in the stone and concrete that still stand today, in the lonely arches, the crumbling aqueducts, the straight, true roads that still crisscross the continent, and the silent, majestic ruins of the Colosseum. They are the tangible ghosts of a civilization that shaped our world. The story of Rome is a story of a small village that grew to rule the known world. It's a story of republican virtue and imperial grandeur, of brutal conquest and enduring peace, of brilliant genius and fatal flaws. It is the story of our collective past. And now, as our long journey through its history comes to a close, it is time to let the echoes of its triumphs and tragedies fade into the quiet of the night. Allow the narrative to dissolve, leaving only stillness and peace. The story is over. It is time for you to rest. Good night, and sleep well.